Let's begin in a constructive rest pose, legs bent, back stretched out along the mat. And as always, if time allows, pause the video and just stay here for a few minutes, giving your back time to release and relax. And then when you're ready to go, turn the video back on and we'll get started. First thing we do is zip up the core. If you're not familiar with zipping up the core, go back to my basics video and you'll learn all about that. So we've zipped up the core. We're going to extend right arm, right leg out. Extend it even longer, feeling that side waist expand as we press the arm and press the leg into the floor. And then come back. Keep the core zipped up. Extend left arm, left leg out, out further, pressing into the floor. And then come back. Okay, we'll do that again and add on. Zip up the core, extend the right arm and leg out, extend it out further, press it into the floor. Let's lift the left leg. Lifting and lowering a few times here just to make sure we can do that without letting the pelvis tilt, without letting the trunk move. If you're good there, then go ahead and let that left leg straighten up all the way up towards the ceiling. And at this point, we can point all of the toes and we'll make some tiny little circles. Maybe those circles get a little bigger and a little bigger as long as the hips don't tilt. So the core, the trunk, is perfectly stable. Now change the direction of those circles. And then bend the knee. We'll set the foot down, come back to start. Take a breath. Zip up the core. Extend the left arm and leg out. Extend it long again. Press it into the floor, nice and secure, engaging all the back muscles. We'll lift and lower the right leg with the knee bent a few times. Check and make sure that you're not tilting and not moving through the core. If you're stable there, you're ready to move on to that next step of extending the leg up. At this point, all the toes will point and we start to make a few little circles, starting out tiny, getting a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger as long as the pelvis doesn't tilt. And then we'll go the opposite direction. These movements are very small, but they're very deep. Okay, we'll let that leg bend, set the foot down, come back to start, take a breath here. And walk the feet in closer to the bum. Arms are at the sides. Zip up the core. Do a shoulder press. Lift the hips high into a bridge pose. Inner thighs engaged, hamstrings engaged, glutes engaged, sternum bone pressing towards the chin as the tops of the shoulders press down into the floor. Either leave the arms straight here or let the elbows bend. And after the elbows are bent, walk the elbows in so they're right next to the ribs, and then let the lower arms open out like a gate and then close like a gate swinging. So keep the hips lifted in the bridge pose. Don't compromise that. But if you've got the bridge pose down, then go ahead and let the arms open out. This is a rotator cuff, a shoulder exercise. Once more with the arms. And then as one unit, lower the hips back down, take a breath. And then we'll go back into another bridge. So zip up the core, shoulder press, lift the hips high. This time come up onto the tiptoes, walk the feet in just a little more. So now we're engaging the calf muscles as well as all the back muscles and along the backs of the legs. From here, add a few little pulses as you press your pubic bone up towards the ceiling and hold. And then release that pulse. Pulse it again. Release. You probably can't even see this on the video. It's a very subtle movement, but it's very, very deep. Once more. Then set the heels down. Lower the hips down. Take a breath here. And then one last time into the bridge pose. Zip up the core, shoulder press, hips lift high. This time we'll let the toes lift off of the floor. Let the arms bend. We go into one more set of the rotator cuff exercises, letting the lower arms come out and in, swinging open, well, not swinging, slow and controlled, opening and closing a gate. Just make sure those elbows are in right next to the ribs. They're not extended out. One more. And set the toes down. Let the arms come straight at the sides. Lower down. Take a breath here. All right, let's zip up the core again. Let's bring both legs up towards the ceiling. Toes are pointed. We'll lower the legs into some scissor positions here. So we go slow and controlled so that momentum and gravity doesn't help, but slowly lower the right leg down until it just hovers over the floor. Back stays neutral, don't let it arch, and then bring that leg back up. Let's let the left leg go down. Now it doesn't have to go all the way down. You can just take it down, even a few inches or a quarter or half of the way. Let's bring it back up. You work your way up to going all the way up and down. So we alternate, pausing with them both at the top if you like, or then when you're ready, you just have them continuously in motion. But again, we're not using momentum or gravity. This is all the deep, deep core working. Last time through. And we'll let the knees bend. Set the feet down. Take a breath here. And let's walk the feet in a little closer. We'll let the soles of the feet touch and the knees splay apart. Zip up the core. And then using the deep, low core muscles, draw the legs back together. So the legs themselves aren't really working. They're going along for the ride. This is a butterfly. So we start here. You can stay here if needed, or you can take it into a broken butterfly, which means we're only doing one wing at a time. The other leg stretches out straight. So this is how it goes. We start with the knees bent. Let's let the left leg go out straight. And the right knee bends out into the butterfly. Okay, so now the legs aren't doing the work. It's all this deep core, but you bring the legs back to the starting position. And then you switch. Right leg extends out long, left knee bends out to the side, and then you pull them back into position. This one will go back and forth. This one is actually a little easier if you're not on an exercise mat or a sticky mat. If you would just be on the carpeted floor, the legs would slide a little easier. I'm getting a little bit of a drag here, but that's making me work that much harder, so I guess it's a good thing. So it's really easy on this exercise to let the pelvis tilt, and you don't want it rocking side to side. The core, the whole trunk just has to stay perfectly still. It's only the legs that are moving. We'll do one more on each side. You don't have to do a lot of these when you're doing really intense work. All right, go ahead and take a breath here. And then let's zip up the core. Extend right arm and leg. We're going to turn to the side. So using the core muscles to keep us balanced, we'll extend arms and legs, get a nice stretch for a breath. And then go into our leg lifts. So the bottom leg is pressing into the floor. For the top leg, the heel leads the way, toes and knees slightly pointing down so that we're inner rotating that thigh a bit. Slowly lift the leg as high as it will go. Pause. And then lower it back down, but don't touch down. We don't want the leg to rest. We'll take 5 of these. We're on number 3. Sometimes it's hard to go slow. We really want to speed up the pace, but they are more beneficial the slower you go. Now this next time, we're going to just hold the leg up there. And then we pulse just a few times here. Tiny little pulses starting from the highest you thought you could lift it. You squeeze the outer hip, the thigh, the glutes just a little bit more to get those tiny little pulses. And then very slowly lower back down. We'll let that left arm reach up towards the ceiling as the knees slightly bend, setting up for our clam shells. We lift the feet just a few inches off of the floor, zip up the core, and then begin to open and close the clam shells. Again, nice and slow, feeling the deep muscles of the abdomen doing most of the work here. A little bit on the glutes and outer thighs too, but it's still mostly deep core. We're on our last one here. Yeah. And then we'll take it into a twist. And I have a mermaid twist in mind for us today. So we'll bring the arms out, shoulder height, arms out and extending in front. Of course, if you could pull a blanket in if you need a little support for your head, if it doesn't rest on the floor well. And then we straighten the legs out. And instead of keeping the toes like in line with the hips, we actually want the legs behind the hips by just a bit here. Okay. So we'll do this twice. The first time it'll be a modified version, and then we'll do the full version the second time. So we zip up the core. We want to keep the hips facing forward. We don't want to let them tilt back. So in order to do that, this first time, I'm going to modify letting my top leg come a little bit forward to balance, to keep my pelvis in the right plane. So we start to trace a half circle with that top arm reaching overhead. Okay, once it gets about overhead, we want to turn and look at the hand, and the gaze will follow the hand the whole time here. Now the core is zipped up, and from here we want to initiate the rest of the movement with the back muscles. So the muscles around the sacrum are pushing the hips forward. The muscles around the thoracic spine are pulling you into the twist. We'll let that top leg go forward just a bit as we slowly move into this twist, the upper back doing most of the work, the gaze following the left hand as it reaches out into the twist. And then the upper back muscles are what pulls your body back in line to the starting position. Now, if that was easy and balanced, then don't let the top leg come in front this time. Leave both legs zipped up together as one unit, like a mermaid's tail, behind the hips. Zip up the core. We start to trace the top half of the circle. Let the gaze follow the hand. The low back and the sacrum are pushing the hips forward as the upper back is pulling the upper body open into this twist. Once you get as far as you can go, pause for a breath here. And then slowly, slowly letting your back do all the work. The arm just going along for the ride. You return to start. Let the legs bend. Roll back onto your back. And then roll to the other side. I'll go ahead and face away from you so you can see that, that mermaid twist on the other side. But first we've got to stretch out arms and legs, zip up the core, press the bottom leg down, let the top heel lift as we start to move into the leg lifts, slowly lifting as high as it will go, slowly lowering back down. If your mind tends to wander, come back to the focusing on that zipping up of the core. Visualize your muscles hugging all of the vertebrae from the base of the spine up to the top. The next time that we lift that leg, let's hold. And then add tiny little pulses from the top, really engaging those muscles. And then slowly lowering back down. Let the knees bend a bit. The feet come off the floor a few inches, setting up for clam shells. You can let that top arm reach up towards the ceiling. And then we slowly open and close the clam shell. We've got 3 more. Then we'll set up for our mermaid. So we'll bring the arms so that they're coming out in front of the shoulders. Straighten the legs and walk them as a unit behind the hips. Okay, the first time we'll take a modified version. We're going to let that top leg come forward. Right? Zip up the core. Start to trace the top half of a circle. Let your gaze follow the hand that's moving. Once the arm gets to reaching overhead, make sure, double check that you are using your back muscles here and not your arm muscles to open you out into this twist. Gaze following the hand so that even the neck gets involved here. Nothing is relaxed really other than the arms. The back is working from the sacrum to the low, mid, upper back, even the neck. All muscles are working as we come back to the starting position. Okay, so if you did fine with that top leg coming forward, then let's try it with both legs staying back, the full version. Zip up the core. We start to trace that circle and then make sure we're engaging the upper back here. Arms just going along for the ride. The muscles surrounding the low back and the sacrum, they're pushing those hips forward while the upper back and neck are pulling your upper body into this twist. We pause here. It actually feels really good in a really hard way. And then after a breath or two here, we go out of this and reverse it just as slowly as we came into it, using your upper back, your neck, anything but that arm muscles to just pulling you back into position. we'll let the knees bend a bit here. And then let's roll on to the belly. Right, we'll stretch out with arms overhead, legs out long. Then let's zip up the core. Press the hip creases into the mat. Lift the head. Slide the elbows in so they're underneath the shoulders. Let's press down with the elbows, draw the sternum bone forward, lift the crown of the head. Feeling the chest and the upper belly get a nice stretch as the back muscles work a little more. And then let's draw the hands in so that they are underneath where the elbows were. Shoulder blades in and down as we lift up into a little more of a back bend here. And then begin to look over the right shoulder like you're trying to look at your hip. Contracting that right side, expanding the left side. And then return forward facing. And then do the same to the left. We're looking over that left shoulder, trying to spot the left hip or leg. Feel the contraction of the left side. Come back. We'll do that once more on each side. Looking over to the right, feeling the right side work and contract. And then looking over to the left, feel the left side waist working, contracting. And then return forward and lower on down. Let one side of the face rest on the mat. Let the arms extend out like a T. And then let the other side of the face rest on the mat for a breath. And then walk the legs so that they're in. The inner thighs are touching. See if you can let the feet touch so the legs can move as one unit here. Then zip up the core. Press the hip creases into the floor. Lift the head, the shoulders, the arms. Draw the shoulder blades in and down. Lift the upper body. Begin to let the arms travel towards the feet. And then begin to engage the glutes and the hamstrings so that the legs, while they're staying straight, can lift. Keep holding. And then lower the legs back down. Extend the arms back out into airplane. And then let the hands touch down and they slide in so they're right by the rib cage. And we can press into a tabletop position, hands and knees. Knees directly under the shoulders, knees directly under the hips, hands under the shoulders. Zip up the core. Let's take a spinal balance. Left leg and right arm sliding out, lifting up hip height, shoulder height, and extending out again. Then taking the limbs out to a diagonal. Bringing them back in line. And then adding a crunch, not rounding the upper back, just strongly engaging the low abdominal muscles, drawing navel towards the spine, but not letting that back round. It's a fine line. And then extend the arm and leg out again. And set it down. Keep the core zipped up. We'll extend left arm, right leg. Lift, extend again. And then take it out to the diagonal. Bring it back in line. Add the crunch. Extend it back into the spinal balance. And return onto hands and knees. From here, we'll transition into a plank pose. So we can walk the knees back and let the hips sink enough so that we've got that one, so we're straight as a board from head to the knees. And then tuck the toes. See if you're ready, come up into a full plank pose. And we'll turn this into a side plank. Keep that core zipped up. Let's turn onto the left side first. I know I'm facing away from you, but we'll stack the legs, reach that right arm up towards the ceiling. And then let's take a few little pulses with the hips, just reaching them up towards the ceiling as well. Again, these are just slow pulses. You start at what you think was the highest position and then engage so they go just a little more. And hold there, reach the arm overhead, the top arm. And then optional, you can turn this into a wild thing. You take the top foot, put it on the floor behind you so the knee presses up, and then lift the hips, arch the back, reach with the top arm. Again, this is one of those poses that actually feels really good in a really hard way. If you took this wild thing, come back to your plank, or your side plank, and then to the full plank, and then onto the knees. Take a little breather in puppy pose. Let's return onto tabletop. And then walk the knees back so we find that modified plank. You could always stay here and hold. Or tuck the toes under, zip up the core. Let's find that full plank. And then we'll shift it over to the side plank. So going onto the right side this time. Sweeping the left arm up towards the ceiling. Okay, zip up the core, find your stability here. And then when you're ready, start to pulse the hip. Right, then we'll take that top arm, move it overhead. And then if you like to take it into a wild thing, put the left foot on the floor with the knee pointing up, lift the hips, arch the back, reach that left arm. And come back through the side plank to the full plank. 3 breaths here. And then we'll lower the knees down, take a well-deserved stretch into a puppy pose. Walk the hands back in. You can have a seat. Either lay back down and take a rest for a few minutes. Let your body unwind from this work. Or if you'd like more intensity, just start the video over. Do another set or another set until you have done just as much as your body needs today. Thanks for joining me.